for Levelling Up Housing and Communities himself, Michael Gove. Good morning to you. I want to ask you, first of all, about a story specific to you, to your portfolio as a Levelling Up Secretary. This issue with trying to get through these reforms to housing, urgently needed by this country, something that we both agree on, absolutely. But you're having big problems persuading your own party on this. 50 MPs creating a wrecking amendment to this, and 8 of them former cabinet members.
Yes, I wouldn't characterise the approach of my colleagues in quite that way. We all know that the current planning system needs to change, and MPs want to make sure that when we have new houses, they're built in the right places. They also quite rightly wanted to make sure that we prioritise development on brownfield land, and that when new houses are built, that the infrastructure is there, the additional schools, hospitals, roads, and so on. So I think those MPs who've signed this amendment simply want to work with the government in order to ensure that as we reform the planning system, that we take account of their community's concerns and also their concerns about the environment. So their approach is a constructive one, and I want to work with them in order to get this legislation right.
Mr Gove, if there was a poll suggesting barely 1 in 10 people under the age of 50 would vote Conservative recently, if the government doesn't crack down and start building new houses, affordable new housing, you're never going to get those people voting for you.
Well, I think that irrespective of the polls, it's just absolutely a moral issue that we need to make sure that there are more people who are living in homes that they can own, more people who are renting, living in warm, decent, safe and secure homes. So there are a variety of changes that we're making in order to both increase the number of homes that are being built and also to ensure that people who are in rented accommodation have their rights protected.
But are you just putting party ahead of country in all of this? Because Labour have made clear that they would vote through your bill, that they'd support you on this. It would go through Parliament without a problem. It's just that you don't want all the awkward headlines and those MPs exposing rifts within an already troubled party.
No, I want to work with people across the House of Commons in order to improve the situation for people who want to get on the property ladder and people who are renting as well. So I work with the Labour MPs and others on issues like improving the rights of renters. And I also work with Conservative MPs and indeed others in making sure that our planning system works better. And again, I think it's understandable that people who are looking for new development in their constituencies want to make sure that local communities have control over that development. That's completely understandable, totally right, and I want to work with MPs from every party in order to make sure that we've got the right system.
Does that mean, after all, Mr Gove, next week that you will be taking Labour MPs with you through the division lobbies, despite the rebellion by Tory MPs, to get this through?
Well, I think MPs from all sides of the House of Commons will support what we're doing, but I think it's important to make sure that when individual MPs, people who are passionate about the environment, raise concerns, that we listen to them. I've been a minister in various different government departments, and every time we bring forward legislation, bills into the House of Commons, that legislation is always improved by listening to MPs who are doing their job as their constituents would expect in order to improve laws.
Do you think Suella Braverman's doing a good job as Home Secretary? It was a woeful performance in front of the Select Committee yesterday.
I think Suella is doing a good job. Yes, actually. I believe that Suella is doing what is necessary in order to ensure that we can have effective and appropriate border controls and deal with the question of asylum and migration.
She didn't know her own rules. She didn't seem to understand how anybody could apply for asylum in this country unless they travelled here illegally. It was a Conservative that had to point it out to her.
I saw that there was an exchange between Suella and a Conservative backbench colleague. I think it was the case that Suella explained clearly the situation. There are, as we know, routes which the UK generously maintains to allow people from Ukraine, from Hong Kong, from Afghanistan to come here, and British people have opened their hearts and their homes to people fleeing persecution in those areas. But we also have to maintain control. There is a balance here. One of the reasons why we can be generous towards people fleeing persecution in those areas is because the British people have the reassurance of knowing that they have a Home Secretary who, outside the European Union, will ensure that we don't accept free movement, that we do police our borders.
Can you really say you're getting back control, Mr Gove? 40,000 migrants that we know about living in hotels, They're crossing the channel in ever-increasing numbers and very few being sent back. Only 35 Albanians sent back in the last few weeks. The government has lost control completely.
Well, Suella in the House of Commons and also in the committee yesterday was clear that there are challenges which we need to address in our asylum system. And Suella, in her time in office, has made sure that the Manston Processing Centre is up and running now effectively after, again, there were challenges there because of the number of people who were coming over. We've also secured an arrangement with the French government, Suella and her opposite number in France, to better police the channel. But there is more to be done in order to deal with the criminal gangs who are trading in human misery.
What your view is on what is an acceptable level of migration? We're getting the figures, statistics out on net migration at 9:30 this morning. What's your view on it? And is the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister agreed on this? Because we seem to be getting quite mixed messages from them on this.
Yes, I think we're all agreed that the most important thing to do is to ensure that there is democratic control of who comes here. Again, the important thing here is to be flexible. We've accepted a significant number of people here from Ukraine, and I think most people would agree that that was right, that when you have a situation, as we do with that terrible conflict as a result of Putin's aggression, then people have voluntarily opened their homes to welcome people here from Ukraine.
So high net migration this year is acceptable?
Sorry, I missed that.
Well, I'm imagining it's going to be sort of 300, 400,000.
No, well, I think that we need to keep numbers down. We need to keep them under control, but there will always be years which are exceptional. And one of the things I'd say is we have accepted more than 100,000 people from Ukraine. That is not something that I think any of us regret. I think that is something that we all celebrate and embrace. And that means that the last 12 months have been, for all of us, a year in which the British people have shown their generosity. And again, the figures on migration will change year to year, but my own view, the government's view, is that we need to get it down to a sustainable level over time.
We're going to get later, aren't we, Mr. Gove, the new energy price cap. What can you tell us about that?
It's going to be announced by Ofgem, but who are the independent regulators who look at energy. The important thing, of course, is that, as Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, explained in the autumn statement, the government is there in order to ensure that people are supported with their energy bills this autumn, this winter, and into the new year.
Yeah, that's just been announced, actually, Mr. Gove. It's come in at 4,279 in January 2023. So that will increase that. But as you say, bill payers will be protected under the government's energy price guarantee, which is, of course, hugely expensive. But I suppose it explains a little bit about why, as in front of many of the papers today, you're launching this big campaign to try and get households to start taking a bit of responsibility themselves for reducing consumption of energy.
Well, it's a shared challenge that all of us have. We all know that the reason why energy prices have skyrocketed is thanks to the ripple effects of Putin's invasion. The government is stepping in, using taxpayers' money to help people through this particular difficult winter. But it's also the case that all of us can reduce our energy usage by following certain basic principles. The best advice out there comes from the energy companies, from independent voices, but government is also playing its part, encouraging all of us to do what we can in order to keep our bills lower than they would otherwise be.
Have you turned your boiler down?
Yeah, I have, yes. I've tried to make sure that it's a quick shower first thing in the morning, and I personally do everything I can to conserve energy costs. But I also recognise that, people like me, cabinet ministers, are in relatively comfortable circumstances. So we have to be careful in giving advice to other people, because we recognise that there are people in much tougher and more straitened circumstances. That's why Jeremy is providing the support that he is in order to ensure that this winter vulnerable people are protected.
Just finally, I have to ask you about a speech that was given by your colleague, the Policing Minister, Chris Philp, recently. He made a joke at your expense, and I just wondered what your own reaction was about that. He was talking about drug use specifically.
Well, Chris was giving a witty after-dinner speech, and my view is that if we were to ban people making jokes about politicians, then it would be a sorry, sorry state. So Chris is a deft and witty speaker, and as far as I was concerned, the appropriate response was for everyone either to smile wryly or to laugh heartily.
What a good sport. You're fair game then, I suppose, after saying that. Really good to talk to you this morning. Michael Gove, Secretary of State for Levelling Up, thank you very much indeed for your time. Well, let's get some reaction to all of that from our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. A bit of a nasty question from me at the end. You took that very well, took it in his stride. Legitimate, as you say.
He's got a big sense of humour.
He certainly does. One of the most magnanimous people in the House of Commons. In fact, I was in there just last week, and I saw him standing there holding open a door for about 5 minutes as people were filing past. Yes. It's a very generous-spirited person, but it was really interesting to see that the attitude towards what has been termed by many people as this wrecking amendment to the planning bill. It's something that actually the author of the 2019 Conservative Manifesto described as the Destroy the Economy bill, the Destroy the Economy amendment, I should say. Some people in the Conservative Party really furious with these around 50 MPs who have brought this amendment, who of course have juddered this process to a halt. Michael Gove there trying to sort of reach out to those MPs, trying to be warm to them and maybe bring them back into the fold, walk them away rather than using more dispiriting language as we've seen from others. But also interesting that there was no clear commitment there to take up Labour's offer of getting this through anyway with Labour votes. Perhaps the politics of that, again, would be just too difficult.
Interesting.
Shouldn't they, Tom, though, as Isabel said, if they don't take up that offer from Labour, this will be seen as party being put before country, because we badly need those 300,000 houses?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very apt description. I think the problem that DLUC, the Levelling Up Department, are obviously thinking about is what goes then in the next stage of the process. Can they rely on those Labour votes through committee stages, through second and third reading in the House of Commons as well? But clearly the Labour Party are wanting to make a big play, that they want to take on that mantle of home-owning democracy. It's something that the Tory party used to sort of own as an issue, much as the Tory party used to own law and order, migration, lots of the other things that we're discussing that now many people are thinking, well, do they have control over this? The Tory party in the 1950s and 60s went to the country with poster campaigns talking about how many houses they were building, talking about creating this home-owning property-owning democracy. It was something that the Tory party used to be very, very proud of, building loads of houses. And now, these days, you get Tory MPs in lots of constituencies boasting about stopping houses being built. It's the most remarkable turnaround.
Yeah, and so frustrating for young people, as you describe as well, that sort of intergenerational disparity and disquiet really growing on that topic. He was quite slippery on the issue of net migration, obviously pointed to the fact there's been this huge programme of bringing in people from Ukraine and Hong Kong this year. But no return to the days of David Cameron when he wanted to get net migration down to the tens of thousands.
No, it's interesting, listening to the rhetoric of Rishi Sunak over the last few weeks. He's got a new phrase whenever anyone brings up the question of net migration. He says he wants to deal with illegal migration first before they start talking about targets or numbers with legal migration. Now, people might say in response to that, well, what on earth are you doing? What on earth are you doing about the illegal immigration problem then?
Isn't every person who crosses the channel an illegal migrant?
That's exactly the case as things stand, and of course we're getting on for 50,000 of those this year. Although, as you were saying, the legal migration could well be into the 400,000 mark, of course comprising many, many people from Ukraine, over 100,000 people, people from Hong Kong, people from Afghanistan as well. So maybe a bit of an outlier year over the general trend. Of course, the ONS, the OBR, expects migration to come down to 200,000 over the next few years.
OK, Tom Harwood, thank you very much indeed.